The insidious barrier to growth. You're up against something that doesn't give you access to the life that you want to live. That's the proposition in this conversation. So I'm going to ask you, what's a common experience that drives fear or shame? And there's a specific way how that unfolds. And it's quite likely many of you know these concepts. And good for you if you do. Maybe this is a new view. I was criticized, scolded, abandoned, ignored. Something that's happened to you in the past many times over that you know very well, that you know now, that you don't like, that you have a great sensitivity around. Something you experienced in the past you didn't like then, nor do you like now. An experience that robbed you of something. Sense of self for sure. Your sense of trust. Your sense of innocence, you could say. And things changed for you in that moment. And it created an experience, you could say, of mistreatment. And so my hope through this conversation is you can come up with your own language based on your own experience. Some sensitivity you have around being with other people that you don't necessarily like, that you have a tremendous amount of attention on at times. Ignored. I was ignored. Okay, and you have a sensitivity around that. At some point you felt invisible, and that's a practice that you perpetuate still by putting other people in front of you. This is useful language for you to come up with if you don't know it yet, because it is a barrier to your growth. I'm going to share how that shows up. This is a pathological experience, one you know well, that presents as mistreatment and feels demeaning. It did then, it still does now. You don't need anybody, we don't need anybody to create this experience for us. We can do it ourselves, all on our own. And isn't it amazing? When you're speaking to yourself in a particular way that you're so used to, that actually strengthens this experience, that will not allow you to get closer to what it is you want. That's the barrier of how we treat ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, how we can mistreat and demean ourselves. We can do that all on our own, which is tough, and it's a tough practice, and it toughens us up. So much so we become rigid and dry until something breaks. And that can definitely happen. So well, in fact, it's an experience that grips you with a unique emotion, set of behaviors that act as a barrier for growth. This word, this sentence, this concept, supported by emotion, that supports a set of behaviors. So we start behaving out in the world in a particular way, and specifically in our relationships. If we act this out, we're getting farther away from people, not closer. That's the tendency. We like to be close to people. Not all the time. But that's something that we certainly appreciate, to be with people versus not, and how difficult it is to create that over and over again, especially if we lead with this experience. When I have this experience, I feel, and you feel something. And when you feel this, there's a set of behaviors that presents itself and consumes us, and then we start simply behaving. One of the ways in which that shows up for me is, I was mistreated, I felt unsafe. When I feel unsafe, I withdraw. I become quiet. I withdraw. I move into myself. And that's easy for me to do. That's why teaching is such a confrontation for me, often. Because this is not necessarily where I want to be, in front of people. There's less of an escape for me. And that's why teaching is so good for me. So I can continuously confront this side of me. And it's not just some concept, it's us. We've designed our life, our bodies, our beings around this experience. That's the consideration. It's not just some thought, it's you. And the ability to get access to this mechanism through the practice of yoga is profound, because you can start to unwind it and weaken it. And that's the idea. So you can strengthen something else. I'm going to speak to my relationship to women, the source of which is my relationship to my mother. And what I'm about to share is not true all the way through, of course. It's an experience I had that I can continue to have now. When I was young, I felt like I was a bother, an obligatory object that was coldly attended to. And so in that, I felt uncared for in various different ways, and didn't give me access to the very thing I wanted. It was nurturing. I had no access to that. That's what it felt like. All the time, of course not, but at times for sure. What that experience shaped was my relationship to care, touch, and love. What I learned very early was that you don't deserve care, touch hurts, and love is painful. That's the experience I've been carrying around most of my life. And that's how I've been engaging with women. That you were a source of pain, and I have to watch myself around you because soon I will be hurt. And so most of my life, I went through my life feeling unnurtured. I didn't know how to take care of myself. And I certainly wouldn't allow other people to take care of me either, because I didn't trust them. Because what I believed was soon I was to be hurt. And that's the very thing that I included, was people in my life that perpetuated that outcome for me. That you're an obligatory object that will be coldly attended to. And for a very long time, I could not figure that out, why I was reliving this experience over and over again. My teaching approach has given me access to learning much about myself, and that's something I appreciate. I have been and am the test experience within my own methodology, trying to save myself, to understand why I suffer so much, and why life is so much filled with misery at times. And language has been a key element to that, for me to unpack and unwind and to get access to the language that I was using within my own conversation. Now, has my mother been that in my life? The great source of that all of the time? Of course not. I don't need her for that experience. I've adopted it and I've perpetuated that most of my life, all in the absence of her. I don't need anybody to create that level of suffering for me anymore, at all. But that seems to me the way it goes. As if we have an experience that does not feel good, or we feel we were mistreated, demeaned in some manner, we start to protect ourselves and live our lives that way. And I imagine that's true for you in your own way. And to be able to get access to that, maybe you already have it, but maybe in a new way. What that could actually represent to you, what that actually mean to you. It's the gateway into change, which is a beautiful thing, which is not easy. And so that's how it's unfolded for me. I was mistreated, I felt unsafe. My behavior and response is to get quiet and withdraw. Protect. You are not safe, you'll never be safe. Everybody's a threat. Be on guard. Toughen up. Suck it up. And I imagine that sounds familiar in some ways. And so I have a question for you. If you have your language, I was criticized, I was abandoned, I was ignored. I mean, the list goes on and on. I just gave you some examples. How are you left feeling in that experience? This is what I'm speaking about. This is the internal posture. This is the posture. This is who you become. Hopeless, helpless, powerless, don't belong. That's the posture. There is a posture that supports this outcome, this experience, that you know very well. And however that shows up in your body, maybe your shoulders round, maybe your eyes drop, maybe your breath quickens, maybe you clench your hands, grip the ground with your toes. Who knows? Grit your teeth, squint your eyes, close your ears, whatever. But there's a posture that supports this experience. That's what you're attempting to remedy, you on your mat, to get yourself out of that posture. Because that's what people see. And you could say, no, that's impossible. It's like, no, it's not. That's what people see. That's what people feel. And that's what's profound. And if we're not careful, people will take advantage of that posture. Absolutely. How do you know that? It's already happened. You've been here, you've been in your body, in life long enough to know what I'm speaking about and how often you have been taken advantage of in your life as a consequence of this posture. It's happened. And if it's happened, it will happen in the future. Ideally less, because you're in the posture less. And that's the attempt to make this posture less. It doesn't have the posture to support the experience. That's the death of something called you. And so that's the confrontation. You and your mat. This, the thing that does not want you to grow, the thing that wants to keep you the same. Exactly the same, which is a problem. If I chose to stay the same, would have been easy, which would have been easy for me, I would not have the relationships I have now. I would not have the relationship I have to myself, where I can actually take care of myself and nurture myself. Hooray for me, because I did not have that access. And I have a very different relationship to women, thank God. And I'm very grateful for that. Because if you haven't noticed, I'm consistently surrounded by women. Wow. I have two sisters, I'm in the middle. I've created this place, which is attended to largely by women. And so it's given me unique access to sorting myself out in the ways in which I've needed to sort myself out. And every day is that opportunity, every day.